They said no one escaped the Talvik Dominion once their warships were dispatched. Whole systems had been erased from star maps just for harboring a fugitive, their moons split open like eggs and their suns darkened by orbital sieges. So when the Dominion announced they were sending 50 warships after a single human, the galaxy held its collective breath. That number wasn't meant for one person, it was the kind of force meant to erase civilizations. 50 warships meant no games, no warnings. It meant obliteration. The unusual part, the part that made smugglers laugh nervously over drinks and made news anchors stumble over their words, was that the human in question wasn't a general, or an admiral, or even some shadowy war criminal. His name was Elias Rourke, and the last verified footage anyone had of him showed a scruffy man in a patched flight suit walking into a docking bay with a thermos of coffee in one hand and a half-eaten sandwich in the other. No insignia. No army. No fleet. Just one man with a reputation whispered in taverns, mocked in council chambers, and dismissed as legend by anyone too civilized to imagine otherwise. They called him the Ghost of Klyn, the Black Captain, the one who walks away. But the truth was harder to pin down. Some said he was just lucky. Others swore he'd found something ancient in the ruins of forgotten wars. And then there were those who claimed he didn't even exist, that Elias Rourke was just a name the galaxy gave to chaos whenever humans broke the rules of physics again. Commander Talvik of the Dominion didn't care which version was true. Orders were orders. The Dominion's council had decreed that the human be captured or eliminated. 50 warships under Talvik's command were to box him in, chase him down, and ensure he never slipped through the cracks again. 50 ships for one? Grumbled Captain Dresk of the warcruiser Volker. His mandibles clicked with dry amusement as he spoke over the fleet's encrypted channel. This is a waste of Dominion firepower. Talvik's face appeared on every captain's holoscreen, sharp features carved in Dominion steel discipline. You mock the order, Captain Dresk, yet the Council does not waste ships without reason. This human has humiliated us before. The raids on Yalner, the destruction of the Herrick dreadnought, the sabotage at Jurna's dockyard. Do you think those were accidents? Anecdotes, Dresk snorted. Stories spun by drunk spacers. I've read the reports. The so-called ghost never leaves evidence. Convenient. Convenient, Talvik said, leaning forward until his shadow cut across the transmission. Is exactly what makes him dangerous. Find him. Kill him. Or the Dominion will find you. The channel clicked off, leaving silence. But somewhere beyond their formation, drifting at the edge of an uncharted nebula, Elias Rourke leaned back in the pilot's chair of a ship that technically wasn't supposed to exist. It was ugly by Dominion standards, cobbled together from human scrap, alien salvage, and technology no sane engineer would ever try to blend. Its hull looked like someone had taken a battleship, a freighter, and a racing skiff and glued them together with spite. Its engines purred in a way that made mechanics twitch. Rourke sipped his coffee, stared at the display, and chuckled. 50 ships. For me. I should start charging rent in their heads. His co-pilot, a small spherical drone with more personality than programming, beeped reproachfully. Correction, they're not here for you. They're here for the embarrassment you cause. That's still me, Gearbox, Rourke said. He tapped the side of his thermos against the console. Anyway, I told you it'd happen eventually. They'd throw half a fleet just to prove a point. Dominion pride is more fragile than a glass hull in an asteroid storm. The drone wobbled closer, optics glowing. Probability of survival, decreasing by the second. Rourke grinned. Good. Wouldn't be fun otherwise. The thing about Elias Rourke was that he wasn't the galaxy's best pilot. He wasn't the strongest fighter. He didn't even have the best ship, though his was admittedly something special in ways he kept secret. What he had, and what made him a nightmare to powers like the Dominion, was an almost suicidal disregard for the rules everyone else followed. Where other captains calculated margins of error, Rourke tested how far those margins could bend before they screamed. Where fleets trusted in numbers, he trusted in chaos. And where everyone else assumed the human psyche couldn't withstand hopeless odds, He made hopeless odds his favorite playground. So when the Dominion ships began to tighten their formation, scanning the nebula, Rourke didn't panic. He turned down the brightness on his displays, stretched his arms, and finished his sandwich. "All right, gearbox," he muttered, crumbs scattering. "Time to see if they still haven't learned a damn thing." And that was exactly where he liked to start. The first Dominion ship to make contact was the Krythos, a sleek frigate with enough firepower to crack a moon. Its scanners swept through the nebula, painting the field in pale light. "Contact," its operator reported, claws dancing over the console. "I have faint heat signatures. Possibly a small vessel, hiding." Captain Vren leaned forward. "Lock weapons. Pin it before it slips." But the moment they tried to focus, the signal vanished. Like smoke. Like a ghost. "Reacquire!" Vren snapped. "Aye, sir, it's gone." The signature fragmented. Across the fleet, similar reports trickled in. Ghost readings. Phantom blips. Signals that appeared just long enough to bait pursuit before scattering into nothing. Warships pivoted, engines flaring as they tried to chase shadows. Rourke, meanwhile, whistled a tune as his mismatched ship drifted between gas clouds, its systems deliberately leaking false signatures, bouncing echoes off nebular debris. Gearbox twitched nervously. "They're scattering," the drone buzzed. "Your plan is working, but probability of eventual detection remains." "Shut it, Gearbox. Enjoy the art of the dance." For 2 hours, 50 Dominion warships chased a single man through clouds of cosmic dust. To outside observers, it looked absurd, a wolf pack trying to corner a mouse that kept drawing mustaches on their noses before darting into the dark again. But the absurdity was exactly the point. Each failure chipped away at the Dominion's sense of control. Each wasted volley and recalibration bred impatience. Rourke knew they would get sloppy. And sloppy commanders were dead commanders. The first explosion wasn't his doing. Not directly. 2 frigates, overzealous in their pursuit, miscalculated trajectories and clipped each other in the dense cloud. Sparks became fire. Fire became rupture. By the time their captains barked emergency commands, both ships were lost in a silent blaze that briefly lit up the nebula like a dying star. Talvex slammed his fist against the arm of his chair aboard the flagship. "Enough of this mockery! Form the Trident! Box him in!" The Trident was one of the Dominion's most ruthless strategies. 3 converging spearhead formations that left no escape vector. It had trapped rebel fleets, pirate armadas, even the swifter Serkai raiders. No ship had ever slipped through it. Elias Rourke leaned back, smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Ah. They're finally getting serious. About time." Gearbox whirred. "We are trapped." "Correction," Rourke said, powering up his ship's engines with a sound like a dragon clearing its throat. "They think we're trapped." Outside, the nebula swirled with growing light as Dominion ships closed in, weapons primed. Every sensor showed Elias Rourke boxed into a shrinking triangle of death. No warp vector. No hyperspace window. No chance. No one watching the Dominion fleet could believe their eyes. 50 warships, forged in the crucibles of conquest, had formed the dreaded Trident formation, a maneuver feared across the galaxy for its merciless efficiency. It was a cage with no key, a shrinking noose of firepower. Countless enemies had perished within it, their ships shredded into molten shards before they even had time to scream. And yet, at the heart of this death triangle, Elias Rourke reclined in his patched pilot's chair, twirling his empty thermos like he was waiting for a late train. "Probability of survival, 1.3%. Gearbox droned, its metallic body vibrating with agitation. "That high?" Rourke grinned. "We're practically immortal." The Dominion captains didn't find it funny. On every deck, across 50 bridges, tension knotted like steel cables. Even those who scoffed at the human legend found themselves whispering silent prayers to whatever gods they half remembered. If Rourke escaped, the shame would be historic. No commander wanted their name etched into the Dominion's annals as the fool who let the ghost slip through their fingers. Commander Talvek's voice cut across the fleet's channel, cold, and sharp as a blade. Focus! He is one ship. One man. If you cannot crush this pest, you are unworthy of Dominion rank. Fire on my command. The walls of the Trident burned brighter as warships charged their weapons. All right, gearbox, Rourke muttered, flipping a row of illegal switches that hummed ominously. Time for a little improv. The ship shuddered as systems no sane mechanic would ever connect powered on simultaneously. A human-built overdrive booster, a piece of alien cloaking tech he'd borrowed, and something he never explained to anyone, a relic pulsing with faint, eerie light, salvaged from the ruins of a dead world. Together, they made his vessel less a starship and more an accident waiting to happen. But that was the trick, no one could predict an accident. Not even the Dominion. The order came. 50 ships unleashed hell. A cascade of plasma bolts, torpedoes, and energy beams converged on the nebula's core, tearing the void apart in a symphony of destruction. Shockwaves rolled through the gas clouds, igniting them into brief bursts of fire. Every Dominion scanner confirmed the same thing. No vessel could survive inside that kill zone. Target eliminated, reported Captain Dresk with smug finality. The ghost is ash. But then the debris cleared. And something moved. A streak of impossible motion darted out of the firestorm, weaving between detonations with the grace of a predator that knew the dance steps before the music even began. It was Rourke's ship, scorched, battered, but very much alive, skimming inches from destruction with each impossible turn. He's alive? Dresk snarled. Impossible! No, Talvik growled. It's him. Rourke laughed inside the cockpit, exhilaration pumping through his veins like rocket fuel. Oh, you beautiful idiots! You made a cage with bars wide enough for me to dance through. Gearbox spun frantically in the air. You should be dead. You should. Relax, Rourke said. I've still got a few bad ideas left. Instead of running, he did the unthinkable. He turned toward the Dominion ships. His vessel plunged headlong into the closing formation, threading between cruisers that had never in their long service lives been forced to adjust course for a single target. Dominion captains screamed for evasive maneuvers as Rourke's ship darted between them like a wasp among lumbering beasts, sowing chaos wherever it passed. Then he flipped the second switch. Panels across his ship's hull spat out canisters, junk, really. Old scrap metal, half-melted engine cores, and chunks of asteroid ore he'd collected for just such an occasion. Each one was coated in reflective materials scavenged from stealth tech, bouncing sensor signals back in maddening ways. To Dominion radars, the nebula now looked like it was filled with a dozen Rourkes. Multiple targets detected! One operator screamed. No phantoms! Ignore them! Barked another captain. But it was too late. The fleet's perfect formation collapsed as ships swerved to chase ghosts. From inside, Rourke tilted his head back and cackled. You can't fight what you can't find. For all their might, Dominion warships weren't built for disorder. They thrived on coordinated strikes, disciplined maneuvers, and the crushing inevitability of superior firepower. They weren't hunters. They were executioners. And Elias Rourke had turned their execution ground into a playground. The first real kill was his. As he skimmed past the frigate, he released a magnetic mine barely larger than a fist. It latched onto the vessel's hull, undetected until it detonated seconds later, gutting the ship from within. The explosion echoed through the nebula, a sunburst of shame for the Dominion. Strike back! Talvik roared, fury in his voice. He is one man! Kill him! But every shot aimed at Rourke risked hitting another Dominion vessel. His insane maneuvers forced the fleet to fire cautiously. And cautious fire in a battle of speed was no fire at all. Rourke darted between two cruisers, skimming so close his ship's hull scraped ion residue from their shields. One panicked captain fired anyway, and the beam ripped straight into his ally. Another Dominion ship fell silent, flames devouring its engines. That's two, Rourke said with a wicked grin. How many more until they realize numbers aren't everything? Gearbox buzzed in alarm. Warning, your shield capacity is at 20%. Hull integrity dropping. Don't worry, Rourke muttered, pulling another half-eaten sandwich from a compartment. I've been worse off. Do you ever take anything seriously? Of course, Rourke said through a mouthful of bread. Lunch. I take lunch very seriously. The Dominion, however, was no longer laughing. The humiliation burned deeper with every passing moment. 50 ships had cornered one human, and already 2 were gone, not from his superior firepower, but from the chaos he sowed among their ranks. The galaxy would hear of this. They had to end him now. Talvik clenched his teeth until they bled. Bring in the dreadnoughts. End this farce. From the edges of the formation, 2 massive warships advanced, behemoths bristling with enough artillery to pulverize continents. Their guns tracked as one, locking onto Rourke's ship. Even he felt the shift in pressure. His cocky grin faltered for the first time. Gearbox, he said quietly. Yes? This is going to hurt. The dreadnoughts fired. Twin beams of annihilation carved through the nebula, collapsing gas clouds and boiling space itself in their path. Rourke's ship Dove twisted, rolled, but the blast still clipped his wing, tearing half the panel away in a spray of sparks. The cockpit screamed warnings. Fire suppression systems hissed as smoke filled the cabin. Gearbox wailed. We are finished. This is the end. But Rourke wasn't finished. Through the smoke, he slammed his hand on the third switch, the one he swore never to use unless he had no other choice. The relic embedded in his ship's core flared, spilling light that bent space around it like liquid. The Dominion scanners shrieked with impossible readings. Rourke gritted his teeth as the cockpit shuddered violently, pressing him into his seat. Hold together, you ugly bastard! Just hold! The ship vanished. To the Dominion fleet, it was as though the human had evaporated into thin air. No warp signature. No jump trail. Just gone. Silence hung heavy across the command channels. Then, from behind the dreadnoughts, a voice crackled through open comms. Calm. Mocking. Infuriating. Missed me. The Dominion fleet wheeled in panic, scanners flaring, but it was too late. Rourke unleashed a barrage of improvised explosives directly into the dreadnought's engine vents, timed with surgical precision. One erupted instantly, its core cracking like an egg, while the other staggered, half crippled, its hull glowing with internal fire. Talvik's knuckles whitened as the shame carved deeper. 4 ships gone. A human laughing at their might. Across the galaxy, observers watching the battlefields would later swear they saw something more than human at work. Some said Rourke had made a pact with ancient powers, others claimed humans themselves were unnatural creatures who thrived where no logic said they should. But whatever the truth, the legend was growing, and the Dominion knew it. And for Elias Rourke, this was only the beginning. There was no silence in the Dominion fleet now, only rage, disbelief, and the frantic barking of orders across overlapping channels. 50 ships had been reduced to 46, 2 dreadnoughts among the losses. Not by a fleet. Not by a rebellion. Not by an empire's armada. By one man. By a human. Commander Talvik's jaw ached from clenching. His bridge crew dared not look him in the eye as his voice rumbled like volcanic thunder. He will not make fools of us again. Full pursuit. Close ranks. Do not let him divide you. Yes, Commander. The chorus of voices replied, but none carried confidence. In the shadows of the nebula, Elias Rourke leaned forward over his smoking console, sweat dripping down his brow. His ship groaned like a beast pushed past its limit, hull plating scorched, one engine coughing with uneven pulses. Gearbox spun in the air, optics flickering. Warning, structural integrity at 60%. Shields at 12%. Ammunition reserves critically low. If this continues... I know. Rourke cut it off, wiping soot from his face with the back of his sleeve. His grin hadn't dimmed, but his eyes were sharper now, more calculating. We're running out of toys to throw at them. Then surrender, Gearbox said flatly. Rourke chuckled. You've been hanging around aliens too long. Humans don't surrender. Not to bullies. The drone buzzed. Probability of victory incalculable. Exactly, Rourke said, flicking switches and watching sparks dance across the display. Means no one knows what's going to happen next. Including me. While he patched his systems together, the Dominion fleet tightened their pursuit. They knew better now than to scatter. Every captain's pride was aflame, but Talvek's fury kept them on a short leash. They would corner Rourke again, this time with precision and overwhelming firepower. But Rourke knew something they didn't. The nebula itself wasn't just gas and dust. Buried within it were the ruins of a forgotten war, ancient satellites and shattered battleships left to drift as monuments to carnage. Their presence was erratic, dangerous. Dominion captains avoided such graveyards. Rourke, however, saw them as opportunity. He eased his ship into the wreckage fields, weaving between skeletal hulls and twisted beams of forgotten cruisers. Each pass stirred up debris, masking his trail. The Dominion followed. And that was their mistake. Careful, careful, Rourke muttered, guiding his ship through a gap barely wider than his wingspan. He clipped a rusted turret, sending it tumbling into the path of a pursuing frigate. The frigate swerved, overcorrected, and rammed straight into an ancient cruiser hull. The impact split both ships open, tearing metal like paper. Another fireball lit the void. That's 5, Rourke whispered with grim satisfaction. Gearbox beeped nervously. You are gambling with ruins older than your species. Ruins don't care, Rourke said. But the Dominion does. As more warships plunged recklessly into the wreck fields, Rourke doubled back, using debris as cover. He planted magnetic mines on hulks and let Dominion scanners confuse dead ships with his phantom signals. Soon the graveyard wasn't just a battlefield, it was a trap, each wreck turned into a weapon. One Dominion cruiser fired at what it thought was Rourke's vessel, only to strike a derelict loaded with unstable cores. The explosion rippled through half a kilometer of wreckage, shredding 2 more ships caught in the blast. 7 gone. The Dominion fleet bled power, not just in numbers but in morale. The galaxy was watching, every transmission intercepted and relayed by smugglers, rebels, and opportunists eager to see the mighty Dominion humbled. And humbled they were. Still, Talvek did not waver. His pride was not in question. His very existence as a commander depended on victory. He activated a private channel to his elite, the Black Talons, 10 warships under his direct command, piloted by captains loyal enough to ignore shame and focus on killing. Break off. Surround him in the wreckage. Leave no shadow unscanned. He cannot hide from all of us. The Talons moved, their black-plated hulls gliding like predators through the debris. Unlike the rest of the fleet, they did not hesitate. They advanced with cold, ruthless precision. Rourke saw it on his sensors, his grin fading into a grim line. Well, he muttered, the adults are here. Gearbox trembled. Correction, predators. Probability of survival, near 0. Rourke sighed and tightened his harness. Then we'll just have to make 0 a liar. The Black Talon struck. Their weapons tore through debris with surgical aim, blasting away Rourke's cover. One ship flushed him out with precision missiles, another boxed him in with a net of energy fire. Unlike the others, these captains didn't panic when he weaved between them. They anticipated his chaos. For the first time, Elias Rourke felt truly hunted. Shields gone! Gearbox wailed. Hull breach in 3 compartments. I noticed! Rourke barked, fighting to keep his ship steady as alarms screamed. A glancing blow had torn open part of his starboard wing, and atmosphere vented in a stream of glittering ice. The Talons pressed in, their formation a tightening spiral. Rourke darted left, right, spun through collapsing wreckage, but they matched him move for move. This is it, Gearbox whispered. Not yet, Rourke growled. He yanked hard on the controls, diving deeper into the graveyard, straight toward the largest ruin of all, a shattered dreadnought, its carcass drifting like a dead god. Its hull was torn open, exposing a cavernous interior big enough to swallow ships whole. The Talons hesitated only a moment before following. Inside, the wreck was a labyrinth of jagged corridors and twisted metal. Rourke's ship scraped through, sparks trailing as he twisted violently to avoid collision. Behind him, the Talons pursued, their black hulls casting shadows through the wreck. "Warning, navigation impossible," Gearbox said flatly. "Perfect," Rourke muttered. He didn't need navigation. He needed chaos. He threaded through collapsed decks and gutted chambers, weaving a path so reckless even the Talons hesitated. Two of them clipped wreckage, tearing off stabilizers and spiraling into darkness. Rourke used the moment to plant another mine, detonating it just as two more Talons entered. The blast collapsed the bulkhead, crushing them beneath centuries of dead steel. 4 down. 6 to go. The surviving Talons adapted quickly, spreading out to cover exits. They drove Rourke deeper into the carcass, forcing him into a dead-end chamber where ancient reactor coils glowed faintly with radiation. "Nowhere left to run," Talvek's voice snarled over the comm. "End of the line, human." Rourke sat in the smoke-filled cockpit, breathing hard, eyes blazing. He reached down and touched the relic embedded in his ship's core, its eerie light pulsing beneath his fingers. Gearbox trembled. "You're not seriously." "I am." He slammed the switch. The relic flared, bending space within the dreadnought's carcass. Walls groaned, gravity twisted, and the wreck itself shuddered as if remembering the war that killed it. The Talons fired in panic, but their shots bent off course, warped by the distortion. One beam arced back into its own ship, slicing it in half. Rourke roared as he pushed his ship through the collapsing chamber, riding the wave of warp space like a surfer on a tsunami. His vessel shot out the other side of the dreadnought, tumbling and sparking, barely holding together, but alive. Behind him, the wreck collapsed entirely, consuming what remained of the black Talons in a storm of fire and twisted metal. Rourke gasped, his hands trembling on the controls. His ship was a wreck, systems failing one by one. Gearbox floated limply, voice weak. 9 Talons destroyed. But the Dominion still has 37 ships left. Rourke leaned back, exhausted, yet his grin returned, sharper than ever. 37, he whispered. Then the real fun begins. And somewhere across the stars, billions of eyes watching the live feeds realized a terrifying truth. This wasn't the story of a man running from a fleet. This was the story of a man hunting one. The Dominion had lost 13 warships. 13. To one human. Across the galaxy, shockwaves rippled through every listening post, every black market feed, every council chamber where whispers spread faster than light. Empires that had once trembled before Dominion war fleets now dared to wonder, if one human could do this, what would happen if Earth sent many? But for Commander Talvek, there was no wondering. There was only rage. On the flagship's bridge, his claws dug into the arm of his chair until blood ran down the polished metal. 13 ships. 9 of my Talons. For one man. His voice was low, steady, and far more dangerous than a scream. This humiliation ends now. Ready the superweapon. Gasps flickered across the bridge. The superweapon was not meant for single targets. It was designed for planetary sieges, an energy cannon so vast it drained entire reactors for one devastating shot. To use it here, against one broken ship, was beyond overkill. It was desperation. Commander, one officer whispered, if the Council discovers we fired the superweapon on a single fugitive. The Council, Talvek growled, will thank me when his ashes are all that remain. While Dominion power surged into the weapons coils, Elias Rourke floated in the smoking cockpit of his battered ship. Systems flickered. Hull integrity hovered at 30%. One wing was gone. Life support gasped like a dying lung. Gearbox spun weakly, its optical sensor dim. We cannot survive another engagement. They have too many. We have nothing left. Rourke stared at the cracked viewport, where the Dominion fleet loomed like a storm of blades. For the first time since the chase began, silence filled him. No quips. No grins. Just the quiet weight of inevitability. Then he smiled. Nothing left, he repeated softly. Exactly what I need. Gearbox jolted. What insanity are you? Listen carefully. Rourke said, flicking switches, rerouting the last of his ship's dwindling power. We've been fighting like prey. Dodging. Running. But humans don't stay prey forever. We turn. And when we turn... He hit the last switch. The relic in the ship's core pulsed, but this time Rourke didn't channel it for escape. He let it spread. The strange artifact drank in what little energy the ship had left, then began to bleed it out in waves, distorting sensors, bending light, warping gravity itself. Around him, the wreckage of ancient battles shifted, caught in currents unseen. From the Dominion fleet, alarms screamed. "Multiple contacts!" cried one officer. "Dozens, no, hundreds of signals!" "Impossible!" another shouted. "There is only one ship!" But the void told a different story. Where once there had been a single battered vessel, now the nebula bloomed with hundreds of echoes. Some were faint, flickering phantoms. Others gleamed sharp and real, as if entire human fleets had risen from the grave. Rourke's laugh crackled over open comms. "You wanted one man. You got an army." The Dominion ships faltered. Captains hesitated. Some fired wildly at ghosts, tearing into their own allies as beams ricocheted through the distortion. Others pulled back, their discipline fracturing under the weight of fear. Talvik roared into his calm. "Ignore the illusions! Fire the superweapon! End this!" The flagship's cannon whined, coils glowing as power built. The energy spike was so vast it lit the nebula like a false sun. Rourke narrowed his eyes. There it is. He threw every ounce of his failing ship's thrust into one last maneuver, straight toward the flagship. His vessel screamed, engines tearing themselves apart, but it was enough. Enough to dart through collapsing wreckage, weave between panicked warships, and face the charging maw of the Dominion's deadliest weapon. Gearbox wailed. "You cannot mean—" "Of course I do," Rourke said, teeth bared. "If I'm going out, I'm taking their pride with me." The flagship fired. The superweapon's beam tore across the void, a lance of annihilation that would have vaporized a continent. But Rourke was faster. At the last second, he triggered the relic one final time, bending space just enough to twist the cannon's path. The beam arced, impossible, unnatural, then slammed directly into the heart of the Dominion fleet. 30 warships vanished in an instant, reduced to burning fragments. The shockwave rolled through the formation, scattering survivors like leaves in a storm. On the flagship, systems went dark. Fires consumed the bridge. Officers screamed as Talvik clung to his chair, refusing to believe what he had just seen. And in the center of it all, Elias Rourke's ship tumbled, battered beyond repair, drifting on momentum alone. Gearbox's voice was faint, almost gone. "Hull breach in all compartments. Power failing. Elias." Rourke leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars through a cracked viewport. His chest ached, every muscle screamed, but his grin remained. 50 ships," he whispered. "They sent 50, and none returned." The wrecked flagship spun silently behind him, its once mighty form reduced to a drifting corpse. The surviving Dominion captains, scattered and broken, did not regroup. They fled. No discipline, no vengeance. Just fear. And across the galaxy, those watching knew the truth: the Dominion's invincibility was a lie. Later, smugglers would swear they saw Rourke's ship vanish into the nebula, carried by light that bent like water. Others claimed he perished there, entombed in the wreckage of his enemies. The Dominion declared him dead, of course. They had to. But taverns, rebel camps, and frontier worlds told a different story. They said the ghost still lived. They said the human who defied 50 warships would return whenever tyrants grew too proud, whenever empires thought themselves invincible. And they said one thing most of all. If one human could do this, what chance did the galaxy have when humanity truly came to war? And with that, Elias Rourke's legend was sealed, not as prey, not as fugitive, but as the man who humiliated the Dominion with nothing but a broken ship, a relic, and the stubborn will of his species. The galaxy would never forget. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, because more tales of humanity's defiance and brilliance are waiting just beyond the stars.